Okay, it's time for another Sunday school lesson, and today for the Sunday school lesson, I want to talk about the 10 plagues. It's good for you to know some things about the 10 plagues. It's in the book of Exodus in the Bible, and when Exodus starts out, the people of God, the people of Israel, are slaves in Egypt. And in Egypt there is a Pharaoh. He's a king, a dictator. He's cruel and mean, and he's not going to let them be free. He says, no, you have to stay slaves and keep working for free. God had some compassion and love for his people, so he sent Moses with a message to Pharaoh. He said, let my people go. And in Exodus it says about Pharaoh, when he heard that, it says his heart was hardened. He said, nope, I'm not going to let him go. And so God sent these plagues that we're going to study today. 10 plagues. And after each one, he told Pharaoh, let my people go. The first plague was started in the river Nile. The Nile River runs right through the middle of Egypt. It's very important to provide water and fish and the livelihood for all the Egyptians. The first plague, God turned all the water in Egypt, in the Nile and in the little smaller streams, and even water in people's bowls at home, he turned it all to blood. The whole Nile River was full of blood. All the water everywhere was blood. Well, you can imagine how the fish just died because they weren't in water anymore, they were in blood. And how it stank. That was the first plague. So Moses went to Pharaoh and said, you saw what happened. God says, let my people go. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he said, nope, I'm not going to let him go. The next plague was frogs. Now that sounds like a funny plague at first, that there's frogs jumping all around. That'd be kind of interesting. But it got annoying. It got very, very disturbing for the people of Egypt, because there were frogs everywhere, in their beds, in their bedroom, in their mixing bowls, in the kitchen. That's what the Bible says. There were even frogs there. Moses went to Pharaoh, said, let my people go. Pharaoh said, nope. The third plague came, a plague of gnats. They got into people's eyes and nose, just gnats everywhere. The fourth plague was similar, flies. Flies came after the gnats and were on everybody and every animal of the Egyptians. Not for the children of Israel, not for God's people. They didn't have the flies on them. It was starting to get clear what God was doing with these plagues, showing the people of Egypt, hey, this is a warning. You better let those people go. And God told Pharaoh, let my people go, but Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he didn't let him go. The fifth plague was a plague on the livestock of the Egyptians, their horses, their camels, their donkeys, their cattle, their sheep and goats. All their livestock got sick, and many of them died. God told Moses, go tell Pharaoh, let my people go. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he said, nope. The sixth plague was a plague of boils. Now, boils are big, ugly, painful sores that a person gets on their skin and their body. All the Egyptians got these horrible sores, and they were just sick and sore from it. So God said to Moses, go tell Pharaoh, let my people go. And Pharaoh said, nope, I'm not going to let him go. His heart was hardened. The seventh plague was a plague of hail. Hail fell from the sky, and it was scary. But Pharaoh's heart was still hardened, and he said, nope, I'm not going to let him go. The 8th plague was locusts that came and they ate everything, all the grass and all the crops. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he said, nope, I'm not going to let the people go. The 9th plague was darkness. All over Egypt it was dark. Day and night darkness. Pharaoh's heart was hardened. He said, nope, I'm not going to let the people go. And then there was the last plague. It was a plague of the firstborn. What that meant was God was going to have all the firstborn sons in every family among the Egyptians die. One night, all the firstborns sons died in this horrible, horrible plague. I'm going to read about that one from Exodus chapter 13, starting at verse 29. At midnight, the Lord struck down all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sat on his throne, to the firstborn of the captive, who was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the livestock. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt. For there was not a house where someone was not dead. Then he summoned Moses and Aaron by night and said, up, go out from among my people, both you and the people of Israel, and go. Serve the Lord as you have said. Take your flocks and your herds as you have said, and be gone. And bless me also. Now, I'm going to tell a story about one family of Israel, God's people, and how they went through that night of the plague of the firstborn, and how God saved the people that he loved from this horrible plague.
A Special Night, Rebecca's story. Mom, Dad's coming home, and he's got a lamb in his arms. Mom, can it be mine, please, Mom? Rebecca's mother looked at her daughter and sighed. Rebecca always wanted a pet, but they couldn't let her keep one. They were slaves in the land of Egypt, and they were too poor to care for a pet. Rebecca and her brother Joel hardly ever saw their father. He went to work at the brickworks at daybreak every morning and almost always came home after dark. We can't keep this lamb for a pet, Rebecca, her mother explained. It's for a special dinner we are having tonight. Uncle Ben and Grandma will be here too. Now, please take Joel down to the river and see that both of you have a good wash. Rebecca did as she was told. She hated to see her father killed something, even though it meant food to eat. Rebecca was horrified when she and Joel returned to see their father smearing the lamb's blood all around their door. "Why are you doing that?" she demanded. Their father sat down on the doorstep and put his arms around the two children. "I had to kill the lamb and put its blood around the door. If I didn't do this, Joel would die tonight." "Joel would die?" Rebecca looked at her little brother. "He might be a pest sometimes, but she certainly didn't want him to die." "Why?" she asked. "You know that Moses has been talking with Pharaoh, trying to get him to let us go to a new land where we will be free," said Father. "Again and again, God has done great miracles to show Pharaoh his power, but Pharaoh still refuses to let us go. Well, tonight will be his last chance. The angel of death will come, and kill the firstborn son in every family throughout Egypt. But he will pass over every house with the lamb's blood smeared around the door, and not kill anyone there. Now, you must pack up everything and be ready to leave right away." That night, they quickly ate their special meal, roast lamb and flat bread. Rebecca had lots more questions for her father. What do you think they were? Rebecca thought about the lamb that had died so that Joel could live. She also thought about the new land where they would all be happy and free. When I get there, she thought to herself, I'll have a pet lamb of my own.
When we hear in the Bible about these plagues, and especially that last plague where so many people died, there's a couple of important things for us to remember about such horrible things. First of all, sometimes it's like this. Nature goes wrong. You know, a lot of times it seems like nature is so nice and pleasant. Like now when the grass is green and the leaves are coming back and the flowers are out. But nature also has much that's wrong with it. Like diseases and death. And all those other things that were listed in those 10 plagues where nature just goes against what's good and what's right and what's pleasant for us people. You know, and what caused that was the fall into sin. When Adam and Eve were tempted by the devil and sinned. And then every part of creation ever since has been affected by sin. That's just a horrible consequence of sin. And death is a big part of that too. But the other thing to remember about these plagues, and every time when nature goes wrong on us, remember that God is in control. You saw that so very clearly in the way he saved the people who had the blood on the doorposts of their homes. He saved the people he loved. So when we see horrible things happen around us, diseases, pestilence, pandemics, death, we might sometimes wonder, well, why's God let this happen? You know, some people worry. When they hear a bad thing happen, they worry. They think, I must have done something wrong, and I made God mad, and now he's punishing me with this horrible plague or pestilence or the death of somebody I love. What you can see in the 10 plagues is that God didn't do that as a punishment. He didn't bring punishment on Pharaoh, but it was always as a warning. There's a difference between warning and punishment. Perhaps if the police officer or the deputy sheriff sees somebody doing something wrong, he might come over to him and say, hey, you know you're not supposed to climb on that thing. Hey, you're not supposed to walk there or drive there. He might not give a ticket, but he gives a warning. He doesn't give punishment. But then when the time comes that he sees somebody doing something wrong and he's already warned them not to do it, then he's going to be very likely to give out a punishment. Well, God's got a punishment that sometimes he has to give. But there's only one punishment, and that's hell. God made hell as the punishment for those who don't do his will and don't believe in him. But now you have to remember Jesus, right? And the cross of Jesus, where Jesus died for us. There at the cross, Jesus was given all the punishment that you and I should have deserved for the bad things we did. Because of Jesus, we don't have to fear God's punishment. In fact, when we do see bad things happen, then we say, well, God's warning us that, like he did Pharaoh, that bad things might happen to us. So we'll listen to God, we'll love God, and we'll walk in his ways and follow him. And in the church today, the Old Testament reading is from Lamentations. Lamentations chapter 3, And it has some important words about how God takes care of people even in difficult times. It says this, "For the Lord will not cast off forever, but though he cause grief, he will have compassion, according to the abundance of his steadfast love. For he does not afflict from his heart, or grieve the children of men." God doesn't want us to suffer. God doesn't want to make us to grieve. God doesn't punish us because of Jesus. When we have difficult days, when things in the world around us don't work right because nature just goes wrong, we know that God is still caring for us, loving us, protecting us, and guiding us through the danger, disease, and pestilence. Let's pray. Dear God, for Jesus' sake, we thank you that you don't have any punishment for us sinners, but that you forgive us and that you bring us to everlasting life. Help us, dear Lord, to not be afraid even when we see horrible things happening in the world around us, but to trust in you and to thank you constantly for your love for us. In Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.